Welcome to Horticultural Hints, Hoaxes, and Hacks. Join Dan and Randall as they share mountains of horticultural information, expose horticultural hoaxes, and provide useful horticultural tips. Hey there, welcome to Horticulture Hints, Hoaxes, and Hacks. I'm Randall Voss.
And I'm Dan Filius.
So Dan, what should we talk about today? There's a lot of gardening and horticulture stuff going on with the start of growing season. What should we get into today?
Well, Randall, I just got an email from a hydroponic tomato grower in eastern Iowa, and they were complaining about super yellow tops to their tomato plants. So what are your thoughts on yellow tops of tomatoes?
Well, first of all, let's be clear here. Super yellow tops is not a heirloom variety of tomato, is it? there's some pretty crazy names of vegetables out there these days.
No, there's a different grower I know growing pink Berkeley tie-dye right now, but which is a really tasty tomato. But no, super yellow tops is not yet a tomato variety that I know of. And I'm also should be clear, though, I'm talking about the vegetative part of the plant. I'm not talking about yellow shoulders on tomatoes.
Okay.
This is the leaves at the top of the plant are chartreuse, and the lower leaves are a darker green.
Okay.
Still kind of lime green, but still pretty. They're greener than the top leaves of this plant.
Gotcha. Yeah, whenever we talk about kind of yellowing of new leaves, there's a couple things that it can be, but in a lot of plants, it's an iron deficiency. And manganese is also a possibility too. Things like maples will get that. And so iron deficiency, it can look at a couple different ways. And so that's why it's always tricky with these online photos and stuff is these deficiencies look different in different plants. And so in some plants, an iron deficiency is just like a general yellowing of the new growth. And in others, it's more of a whitening where the veins kind of stay green. So we call it interveinal chlorosis, but the blades are still kind of yellow or whitish in color. So this is, these stereotypes of nutrient deficiencies, a lot of them are true, but on the other hand, it's tough to know sometimes. But usually it's a pretty dramatic change between the healthy and unhealthy leaves. So iron deficiencies are a good bet. So let's roll with that. Iron deficiency.
Yeah. Now there are some funny solutions out there, some folk remedies to this that I've heard, like rusty nails, right? Made out of iron. Why not? Add some iron that way. Have you heard about this one?
I have, and maybe we should name a tomato variety rusty nails at some point.
Yeah, I think it's a cocktail already.
But
not a cocktail tomato though.
Yeah, well, yeah,
that would be the one.
Maroon colored tomato called rusty nails. But yeah, probably not. I'd probably call that a hoax. And again, I get the theory, right? A nail is made of iron. These plants are lacking iron, but I think sometimes we like to have simple solutions, and sometimes simple solutions are the best. But plants, if you kind of think about how a plant takes up nutrients, it doesn't just like suck them up like a straw. If a plant has like an intact root system, they have to cross a membrane, and for a nutrient to kind of move into a plant, it has to be in the right form, and it has to be basically dissolved in water. And a rust from a nail or iron from a nail probably is not in the right form anytime in the very, very near future to actually change anything. So I'm gonna call that a hoax, not a hack, Dan.
Yeah, we got to put a big red X over the screen at that point with the sound effect, right?
Yeah. The theory, I get the theory, but yeah, if you've ever bought fertilizer, it's not in a chunk of something. It's in these granules that dissolve.
You're right.
Yeah.
So you talked about it's a fertilizer that's needed. It needs to be available, and the fertilizers that you buy are not looking like that. Tell us, in your opinion, what should a grower be adding to
Yeah,
solve
so
this?
sorry. Yeah, so my background, I worked in the wholesale greenhouse industry and I work with fruit crops. And so we see lots of iron deficiencies in plants like blueberries because
Mm,
they're adapted to a low pH. Petunias, Calibrachoa. Calibrachoa are some people call them million bells. That's a series of Calibrachoa. So it's kind of like calling tissues Kleenex, right? It's
yeah.
like the brand of them. But what all those plants kind of have in common is they're adapted to low pH. And low pH is relative to whatever, but blueberries, they like to be 4.5 to 5.5. And we kind of anthropomorphize plants. I don't know that plants like or love or have feelings, but it's an easy way to describe them. But petunias, calibrachoa, we're talking pH 5.5 to 6. 5 to 6 is their ideal situation. And so quite often it's just a matter that pH is out of whack. So our pH is too high for that plant. It might be fine for a geranium or an apple tree, but yeah, there is no one ideal pH. That's one of my pet peeves too in the
Mm,
garden lore is that, pH is 6.5 is perfect for everything, and it's not. It's perfect for a lot of plants, but not a lot, not everything. And so the thing about pH is it changes the availability of nutrients. And so at a low pH, nutrients like iron and manganese are super available. They kind
yeah.
of change to a form, so to speak, that the plant can take up. And as the pH creeps up, they're still there. They just become less and less available. So think of it almost as they convert to that rusty nail type of thing. They're in a
Hmm.
non-soluble form that the plant can't take up, is kind of
Yeah.
a simplistic way of looking at it. So
Yeah.
it's there, but it's not going to help the plant. And so, these plants like Calibrachoa, Petunia, they're native or adapted to a really low pH. And so they're really inefficient at taking up iron. It's one of those things like if I'm given a huge allowance every week, I'm probably not going to be very frugal with my money, not that I get an allowance or anything like that. And so suddenly if you're cut off to a small amount, it's tough for you to adapt. Your thoughts are already predetermined, like, I'm used to all this and now suddenly I don't.
Yeah.
And so that's a situation that these petunias, calibrachoa, um,
Blueberries.
blueberries, all that kind of get into. And so
Hmm.
usually it's a pH issue. We gotta raise or excuse me, lower the pH. Now, in some cases, maybe this hydroponic tomato grower, we may not be applying it, right?
Yeah, so I asked them, what was your pH of your water? And they say we check it daily. It is between 6.2 and 7.
Okay.
We add a acidifier to the water, and there's a funny thing going on with the water right now where they have to add water every day. It's not just recirculating and
Okay.
they're adjusting, but they have to adjust every day. And so they're checking daily. They in the morning they or whenever they adjust, it's down to 6.2. When they check the next time and add some, it's up to 7.
Hmm.
And so it seems like for them, pH is in the right zone for a tomato.
Okay.
And so that made me wonder if the nutrients that they were applying, that they were dissolving in the water, were either iron deficient or if there was some other nutrient that was because you and I both know that certain nutrients can prevent
Yeah.
absorption of other nutrients. But I don't know well enough how
Yeah,
that works
those
for iron.
Yeah, antagonisms. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
probably say not in that situation. I could be proven wrong, but a couple thoughts on that is our soil, basically anywhere you go, our soil has lots of iron in it.
Hmm.
It's just not always in the form that the plants need. When we're putting plants in potting media, and when we say potting media, peat, perlite, vermiculite, or hydroponic, they don't have that huge reservoir of iron just kind of slowly coming off. So if I'm watering, irrigating a petunia in a pot, or a tomato in a pot, I'm using a very different fertilizer that has every one of the macro and micronutrients that our plants need. So
Mm.
all 12 or 14 or whatever number you choose to call them, macro and micronutrients. In the soil, we got that reservoir and it's just giving it up to the plant. And in potting media, there is no reservoir basically. And so it could be one of those situations that it's not a pH issue. It's just not being applied at a high enough rate,
Yeah.
which is possible in these containerized plants not grown in real soil.
Yeah. I suspect that's the thing.
Oh, I do have one other thought, and I don't know that it's their situation, but when we were growing Calibracoa at the greenhouse I worked at, whenever we overwatered,
Yeah.
iron deficiencies popped up quicker. And
Now, might it be argued that hydroponics is overwatering, Randall?
yeah, I
Hey.
don't know. The premise behind that is, roots need oxygen to do their thing.
Yeah.
And if they're completely saturated, they can't do their thing. And
Mm.
so I could literally see on a bench, yeah, and we can get into watering dynamics in a different episode. The places where you're overwatering, the plants are always more prone to iron deficiency. And in a greenhouse too, which I assume these tomatoes are, those
Hmm.
plants are growing at such a rapid rate, and there's not wind and full sun to keep them in check that because those plants are growing at a faster rate, they need iron at a faster rate than too. So that could be another reason too. If you put those plants outside, they might be fine because they're growing more slowly.
Yeah. Well, another thing I'll just bring up right here, moving on from tomatoes to another plant that is commonly, I hear a lot of people talk about this one showing iron deficiency, and that's river birch in gardens in landscaping. And the common thing, like I've heard my mom say this, I've seen it online, is you add uh, chelated iron. Chelated spelled like chelated, CHELATED, but pronounced chelated. And so like that one seems legit. Would you agree that that's legit, like chelated iron?
Yeah, chelates work. It's just a matter of what chelate works for your situation. So,
Wait. There's more than one type of chelate. So
oh Dan, it's never that easy. It's never that easy. There's always more, right? I mean,
yeah,
the options of products are there. It's
yeah.
mind blowing how many products. There's there's a few different groups of chelates. There's three that are the most common, and so first of all, usually the pH is probably too high for river birch in that spot. So if you can lower pH, great. But
Similar situation to what you were saying with the Calibracoa and the
yeah,
petunias. Yeah,
or blueberries, we put down sulfur or something like that to lower the pH, and that takes a long time. It's going to take a year, give or take. And so these iron chelates, they work. The challenge is they only work over a fairly narrow range of pH. And so, for example, the most common one is iron EDTA. And don't ask me to say
oh,
what EDTA stands
I'm
for.
looking it up
You're
right
looking it up.
now.
Yeah, I stumble over my normal words. I can't pronounce that, but so iron EDTA is the most economical chelate. It's the cheapest. But at a pH 6.5, past that probably isn't going to be effective. And so, yeah, go for it, Dan.
I'm gonna do my best here. Ethylene dinitrile tetraacetatoferrate.
I'm going to take your word for it. So,
I think ADTA sounds good.
yeah, yeah. So, in the case of that river birch, that chelate the pH may be a pH 8 or something like that. And so that chelate probably helps some, but it may not work at a high enough pH range to actually help that river birch. It
Yeah,
might, but my guess would be probably not. If the pH is 6.5 in that soil, that river birch is probably going to be okay. Now that petunia or calibrachoa, at a pH 6.5, they're showing iron deficiencies, and that's probably going to work just fine. But it's a short-term fix, right? I don't have a good handle on how long they last. I've read different stuff, and I'm not gonna like guess, but it's gonna last a while, but not forever. So The other products out there, there's iron DTPA that works at a little bit higher pH, and iron EDDHA is probably out of those three the most effective at getting in that pH 8.5 range that it still makes iron available. So
Yeah, I looked those other ones up and they're just as obtuse of saying it. So so iron DTPA works at higher pH. Is that what you said?
so in terms of efficacy, EDDHA is the best of those three. It works at a highest pH. DPTA is kind of in the middle, and EDTA is the least effective at a high pH.
Okay.
In the greenhouse world, it probably worked just fine because usually we're not looking at a pH of 8 in your pots for petunias. They'd be very unhealthy for a very long time if you're growing a petunia at a pH 8. But in a soil situation, you know, chances are you probably need one of those more aggressive chelates. And you probably guessed it, Dan, they are more expensive. You know, the more effective ones are more expensive
Yeah.
and they're less concentrated. So there's less iron per pound in all those too. So you need a lot more of it. So
Hmm.
it makes sense to use the cheapest one you can just
Yeah.
because yeah, why spend more money than you have to? So that's our hack. That's a proven hack, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. And then I mean, would it also, you mentioned sulfur applications to bring the pH of the soil down. Now, of course, your tree is rooting in a large
Yeah.
area, so you might have to amend a larger area. But I know, like for pH additions in say annual crops, a sulfur addition is a really it's works. It works really well. So I don't know.
Yeah, for if it's a potted plant, we're usually injecting sulfuric acid into our irrigation
Hmm.
water. Citric acid works too. It's just really expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we're talking like a row of blueberries or something like that, you know, I know growers that will just apply sulfur under the mulch under the blueberries. Yeah,
Hmm.
there's just to save money, right? There's
Yeah.
probably some roots in the grass middles that it's at a higher pH, but you know, the majority of those roots are probably going to be under that mulch, and so that's where they focus their pH changing on because it's not cheap if you have to change pH a lot. So
Right. Now, for one who's maybe afraid of sulfuric acid use, I know that a lot of sulfur that's used in vegetables are these little pastilles.
yep,
And is that what folks are putting underneath the mulch in blueberries?
yeah, 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 elemental sulfur, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. But the problem with doing that in a potted plant like a calibrachoa, excuse
Oh,
me, calibrachoa petunia, it's going to take way too long.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. For I know people in high tunnels who are using this to counter the high alkalinity of water
yep,
that they're applying to the soil there. And so yeah, it's a matter of years, with
yeah,
it, or 9 months to a year before you
yeah.
start to see an impact on this on the pH numbers. And another hint to growers out there: if you are a certified organic grower, there is a certified organic formulation of these
Oh,
sulfur pastilles that is allowable for use in high tunnels. You check with your certifier; maybe they don't have a problem with the other types, but know that there is one out there.
cool. Well, so rusty nails. Eh, eh. But pH changing, yes, if you can do it. Maybe keep your watering in check a little bit because those stressed out roots aren't as good at taking up nutrients. And chelates work. Just got to have the
Yep.
right one.
Yeah. Excellent.
Cool.
Thanks, Randall.
All right. See ya.
Take care.